Hey guys, OGalbina here, bringing you guys our WBE Week 10 PRs for the singles division. I, of course, am not alone. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Shuckleking. Do you want to say hi?
Hey everyone, Shuckleking here.
But yeah, this is going to be the final week of regular season that we are going to be covering. But this one's going to be a little bit different as to how we usually do. Usually we go over each of the games. We kind of talk about what happened in them, what players did great, what they could have worked on, stuff like that. But being that this was week 10 and a lot of the playoff scene was already set in stone, there wasn't a lot of serious games this week and there wasn't really a lot to analyze, barring one game, which we will talk about first. But after we talk about that game, which is going to be Nexus versus Chimp, which did have pretty big playoff implications, we are going to be kind of just going over a whole like cumulative list of how we thought people did throughout the season, kind of talk about their season really briefly and then move on to the next coach. So they'll kind of just like round off the whole season as for how they played the whole time, opposed to kind of like a weekly ranking and how they played this week in particular. Because like I said, lots of meme games, lots of not bringing optimal teams just to kind of save sets and stuff like that, which is again completely fair in week 10 of playoffs and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to like housekeeping stuff like that before we go in. But I do want to, of course, mention definitely drop a sub if you haven't done so already. We've been doing analysis videos like this all season. I would really appreciate it. We're pushing towards 400, so that'd be awesome. Go check out Shuckleking as well. Definitely we upload every other week on his channel too, and he does plenty of stuff over there as well. But yeah, do you have anything to say before we jump into Nexus versus Chimp?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, just get hyped for the new DLC. I'm sure we'll both be posting some content for that.
Plenty. So definitely drop a sub. Very much so appreciated, and it is completely free and super easy. But let's go ahead and jump into Chimp versus Nexus. What'd you think about this game, bro?
It was very fast paced, very offensive, which is cool, and it makes sense for both the teams that they brought, and what they drafted.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So going into the game, as for Nexus side, so going into this game, I believe, what was the exact playoff implications? Nexus, I know Nexus obviously needed to win to make it in, but I don't think he was guaranteed in if he won.
No, he wasn't guaranteed in if he won. Chimp was guaranteed in because even if Chimp lost his game 6-0, he still would have had, and Nexus won 6-0. Chimp still would have had +1 differential on Nexus. So
it was,
Chimp was 100% going to make it. It was with Moet.
Yeah, Moet. So Moet lost and then Nexus won. It was by a specific amount. I forget the exact diff. Or
I think it was 5 or 6 differential.
Okay, so he could have got in over Moet, and I believe Moet did lose this week, correct?
Correct. Yes, he did lose.
So yeah, so ball was kind of in Nexus's court. If he did end up winning this game by a sufficient amount, he could have made it into playoffs. He played pretty well, but unfortunately, he did lose 2-0 in this game. I liked his approach in the game, though. Like you said, it was a very offensive game. He brought Spike Shelmet, so it was cool to see Shelmet come off the bench for the last game of the season, because it actually put in a decent amount of work. Really getting up the spikes really put a lot of pressure on Chimp's Fat to try and check the things like the Rillaboom and like the Guard of War and things like that on Nexus's team. But Chimp also bought a very, very offensive team, and he was able to just position the end game a little bit better than Nexus was. He took a little bit too much chip on things like Keldeo and stuff like that to really put himself in a position to win there in the end. It was a really cool Slurp Puff set by Chimp too, but it was just a very, very offensive game where Chimp was able to kind of just outposition Moet there at the end. I mean, not Moet, Nexus there at the end, and put himself in a position to win.
Oh, for sure. And he did that by setting up a Zero War. He had a pretty cool set that he was able to break down Nexus' team pretty well. But Nexus, he did lose, I think, 2 Mons to the Zero Aura, and then he had a Revenge Kill Rillaboom. But he was still I feel like Nexus still could have won that game even after a Rillaboom, or even after Zero Aura killed a couple Mons on Nexus' team. But I think what really did it in with Nexus, he kind of alluded to it in his video that he let his Keldeo get weak. And he let his Keldeo get weak because he switched out his Rillaboom and switched into Keldeo on Snorlax. I didn't really get that play, especially because all the spikes are up. So Rillaboom was already low-ish anyway. If you're going to switch out, not only is Keldeo taking 25% from spikes, it's also going to be taking a hit from Snorlax, which is going to do a decent amount of damage. If it's very offensive, it could have 2-KO'd even. So that seemed unnecessarily risky. I think the best play for Nexus would have just stayed in with Rillaboom and gone for Woodhammers. That's going to do decent damage to Snorlax, especially in grassy terrain. So I think that was basically the downfall. With such a hyper offensive team, you just have to like stay in and do as much damage as possible.
Yeah, you have to realize what's valuable to you in the end game and what you need health on and stuff like that, which is hard to lose. Which is easy to lose sight on when you are playing such an offensive game. You think like, oh, this Pokemon can live, I can pivot into it, but then if that leaves you open to losing the end game, it's not as great for you, especially with the spikes. Spikes were definitely very, very important on this game for both sides. Obviously, both sides getting up a good amount of spikes. I think Nexus got up 2 layers, and I think Chimp got up all 3. I'm pretty sure.
No, they both got all 3.
Oh, they both got all 3. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was cool to see. Obviously, Klefki is a little bit more of a common spiker, but like I said, the Shelmet was cool. Definitely a really good bring by Nexus. And again, I don't think he played super awful, but you're completely right. It was definitely just letting his Keldeo get chipped down at that point, just to save a little bit of health on the save the Rillaboom for the end. Which again, I understand it, but it was definitely his play too. Kind of just stay in and just pepper that Snorlax with big wood hammers, because like you said, it's not gonna really appreciate those, especially unboosted and things like that. So unfortunately, he is going to take the L, and that's going to be his season. And other than that, like we said, it was just a lot of really, more so meme games and stuff like that. My favorite one of the week.
Or games not played.
Yeah. My favorite one of the week was definitely the Viz game. Seeing the boots Tangela going absolutely crazy. It was really fun to watch. I love Tangle. It's one of my favorite low tier mons to use, and I've seen a lot of meme games where people are like, I'm gonna bring Chlorophyll, Tangrowth, and Tangela, and it obviously never works. But this time it just went absolutely insane on Steve's team, which was really really cool to see.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, I think we can just kind of start jumping into our overall cumulative season rankings and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
First up, we have Fruitberries. Fruitberries ended off the season 2-8. 1-9 minus 28. So not the hottest season for Fruitberries. He did win week 2, so he was off to a decent start off at 1-1, which is definitely you can work with that. That's not too bad. But he was kind of just a product of 1. I don't believe he's super experienced in drafts, so obviously you can't fault him too much for that. But 2, I think his team really held him back this season.
Definitely.
When you have, I've said it a million times, and I think I even preach this more than Shuckle does for sure. I'm very big on speed tiers, and I think in draft, when you're playing a lot of really scary fast offensive mons, and your fastest Pokemon is base 97 speed with Haxorus, which he didn't bring all that often. He brought it 2 times, and looking at the website, he only brought Haxorus 2 times.
Yeah, that was weird.
Which meant the whole season, his fastest Pokemon potentially, which you did bring a lot, was Zatu at base 95, but that's not even a mon that runs a ton of speed a lot of the time. You need the bulk with Zatu because it's actually not really naturally bulky. So that left
you used it a lot for Trick Room even.
So that leaves stuff like Hitmontop and maybe a Scarf Magnezone, a faster Marowak, Glisspot. His team was very, very slow. And when you play those strong offensive wall breakers that, as bulky as your team can be, you having Clef Mag, which is obviously a pretty solid core, you having good low tier bulk, none of that matters when you just get overwhelmed and you're never able to put on offensive pressure because your opponent is always keeping up, offensive pressure on you because of how slow you are, your lack of ability to revenge things and things like that. Relying so much on Ditto is never a good sign of a good team. If you have to bring Ditto every week because your team just can't deal with strong offensive setup, it's never a good sign for the long run, and I think that definitely really shafted him this season. I can't say much about his play and his thought process. I don't think he uploaded a lot of his games. I couldn't find a lot of them, so I can't say much other than his team was just a little subpar for me.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that he just didn't at least upload. I guess life happens, but yeah, it's supposed to be more about entertainment, and if there's no entertainment, then
and I know he put most of his games on Showdown too, and I know the land timer sucks obviously, and that was a big thing for a lot of coaches.
Sure.
I know a lot of them haven't really had to tinker with that yet, and it's definitely not fun. I'll give him that, but it's definitely a little bit more advantageous to play on Wi-Fi if you're looking to go for the entertainment route, like the WBE.
Definitely. And I don't think a whole lot of people are complaining after week
figuring out the week.
So.
Yeah, the first couple weeks it was a big contention. A lot of coaches were yelling about it, but again, once you adjust to it, it's not the worst thing in the world. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. Not much to say about Fruitberry's team. Unfortunate, and we kind of figured it was. I think we had them ranked as like the worst team in the power rankings going into it for the most part.
Yeah.
I thought it was the worst team, so it
I
makes
had them at
sense.
15 or
But
16, but yeah.
yeah, it happens with your first time. Oh, I don't think it's his first time doing draft league, but first time doing Wi-Fi league, especially with such a lot of really big and a lot of very good creators out there. So
yeah, and
it's unfortunate someone has to bite the dust.
A more limited format.
That too.
So
Yeah,
that's always tough. You really have to. It's not as easy as last gen where you could kind of like fall back and there's more options to pick from and stuff like that. Now you really do have to like go into a draft with a plan and really be mindful of what you're doing and stuff like that. So just was unfortunate and all that. Next up we have Patty Trills. Do you want to talk about Patty and his season and all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Patty finished the season. What was it? 2-8, 3-7.
He
Something on the lines of
3-7. 3-7 minus 18. Yeah. One of those wins was a forfeit, I think.
Yeah. One of the wins was forfeit. So it's really, I guess. I think one win was a forfeit and one loss was a forfeit too.
Mm-hmm.
So really, like 2-6 he went this season. Mm-hmm. So I think this was also another team we had ranked in the bottom half anyway. But Necros was on the team, and like Necros it's such a threatening mon, and for it to only get one kill this season, that hurts. That hurts a lot. And only bringing it to 5 games, it's just unfortunate. Mianshao went 11 kills. That's a lot of kills for Mianshao. So good for him. But yeah, no, I also looked at like strength of schedule. So I looked at who everyone was playing. So some people had a lot easier schedule, some people had a lot harder. Fruitberries was about in the middle. Patty had the third hardest schedule though. I think he played 6 people that made playoffs. So that's pretty tough to play a lot of the higher competition in this, especially when we think he didn't have that great of a team going into it, especially like relying on Pharisee to be your steel type, not having grounded poisons, stealth rocker being Golurk and Pharisee. So just some things that we kind of figured it was going to be rough for Patty, and it ended up being so. And he wasn't able to upload his last couple games. So pretty unfortunate end to the season there for him. And I think we both have him ranked at 15.
Yeah, Patty, like you said, he did have a very tough schedule, but the underutilization of Necro really hurts me. Like you said, it's such a good mon. And the Mianshao, he definitely used Mianshao very well. Especially, I think a lot of those kills are padded from his game versus Christian. One of the last games that he played was probably his best game of the season. I believe he 5-0'd him. He swept him with a Scarf Mianshao, with Drain Punch Scarf Mianshao, which is definitely pretty crazy. Cool to see for sure. And I think that was probably his kill leader. So I know my buddy Titus Smile, I think he got like 20 with Mianshao and BBR, which was hilarious. So apparently that's just the mon to have in Gen 8. People are sleeping on Big Mianshao, but like you said, he was a lot like Fruitberries in the sense that his team was very, very subpar. And I think the main thing that really held him back, other than obviously his lack of hazards and lack of really important typings, and at least like those typings being really subpar mons like Pharaoh Seed and not having that grounded poison. I think another thing his team really struggled with was not having that breaker. Nothing on his team could really break open opposing fat to set up for a Necro endgame or anything like that. His best breaker on the team was Mianshao, as you can see. He used it to pretty good success, but when I think offensive powerhouse, when I think breaker for my team, I just don't think Mianshao. And it can definitely do so in specific niche matchups. It's a great Pokemon, but it shouldn't be the Pokemon you rely on. Your Mianshao out of, I guess it's tier 4 here, but tier 3 in most leagues, it isn't going to get you the most reliable results, unfortunately. It pairs well with Necro, though. I will give him that, but definitely. I just think the lack of breaking power, the lack of hazards, especially if you don't have a lot of breaking power and you want to go for that bulkier build, which I guess he kind of was kind of shooting for here. I think you really need that. Yeah, I think you really need a good spiker and good rock support and stuff like that, because what you have here isn't going to be reliable enough to consistently get it up and keep it up and things like that. And I think that would have also very much so helped him in chipping things down for his more passive team, his team that really lacked that offensive oomph that it really needed. So I think that was kind of the main downfall to Patty this season. But again, he had some good showings. Again, he beat Phenotex 5-0, and then he also beat Fruitberry's 5-0. So both of his wins that he played were 5-0 wins. So that's definitely not the worst thing in the world. So kudos to Patty on that, and I'm sure he
Big
could definitely
losses though.
Huh? Big loss, yeah.
When he lost big.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially I remember like Joey's game and MV's game. They were
and I think
not great.
Otto also 6-0'd him. And
oh yeah, Otto's game too.
And Chimp,
yeah,
Chimp 6-0'd him as well. Yeah, it's just like his team was very exploitable in prep. And when you go against good players like that who know what they're doing and know how to really, poke holes in your team based on its weaknesses, and you have so many glaring ones, it's unfortunately what's going to happen regardless of your play, unfortunately. So a bit of a rough season for Patty, but I'm sure he can bounce back. He had a good season the season before, if I'm remembering correctly. Like the last season that he played in WBE, I think it was season 3, it says. But
yeah, I think that was pretty decent, sure. But that happens.
Unfortunately. But on to the next, which is going to be Mr. Seabad,
I don't know. This is probably like my most disappointed coach this season. I have him at 14. You have him at 12, so a little bit higher on him. But looking at strengths of schedules, do you have a guess rank what Seabad's strength of schedule is this season?
I'm looking through right now, and it wasn't the best. Back, he dodged people like AIM and Envy, which was obviously pretty nice. He also dodged Auto. He had to play Viz. He had to play Chimp. Well, other than he had to play Count. But other than that, they're all very winnable. And
exactly.
I guess anybody can beat anybody in draft. I'm gonna say like he couldn't beat the other people, but like
he had tied for the third easiest schedule in a league. 43 win percentage. So yeah, and we also both thought this was the best team like drafted going into it. So having in theory one of the easiest schedules, plus in theory us thinking that he had the best team, and like I'm still looking at his team and it's so cool. Like tier 4 Gudra and Gastrodon when there's no hidden power grass. That's just such a nice combination. Whimsicott is even decent in tier 4. Cloyster's a nice sweeper. Gengar, Tracheon are just two really fast breakers, baby sweepers with Tracheon, and like there's not a ton of speed in this format. He had Milk Tank, which I really liked. So yeah, I just don't understand what went wrong. Maybe it's just the WBE, because I think he went winless his first season.
Well, the season before, I know he played like the first couple seasons Gen 7, but yeah, looking at his overall record, like from past seasons, he didn't do too well last season. I know he's been playing well in other places. He did well in NCT.
Exactly.
He played there. He did very well in BBR this last season as well. Maybe it was while I think the team was good, maybe the team just didn't fit how he plays and how he feels comfortable prepping wise, but
potentially, yeah, and I even remember like early on in this season, I wasn't that impressed with some of his wins. So like I don't think there was just one like shining moment win this whole season necessarily for Seabad, or performance, even if he lost. Like, and it's like his differential isn't terrible. Like he didn't lose games terribly bad, but yeah, it was just unfortunate. This season. Yeah, WB is just fun Seabad, but very entertaining coach, and he has like great graphics and format, and like his layout and his team builders are very great. He has among the best quality in the league, I think. So definitely shout out to Seabad, but just some of the games just didn't go well.
I think you touched on it like perfectly. This was just it was very disappointing to see, because like you said, I loved his team. That offensive core at the top of the team with Gengar, Terrakion was very, very nice. His low tier bulk was also very solid too. He got great value out of his low tiers, like very, very good value. He was just kind of a lot of the time too, I felt like his builds were a little bit subpar. He did bring a couple questionable things that put him in bad spots, and he played a little over reckless at times, which ended up kind of putting him in the back foot.
And sometimes a little under reckless.
Yeah,
honestly.
he could never find the right opportunity in which he should make a play and which he shouldn't. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him this season. The only thing that was a negative about his team was that he didn't have a dark type, and he even picked one up later in the season, Morpeko, which isn't like the most
dark types are overrated.
I mean, I guess he did play Reuniclus and didn't lose to Reuniclus, so maybe they are.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah. I think Shuckle touched on it perfectly, though. I have really nothing else to say. I think Seabad definitely has the potential, and when I watch his games and when I watch his content, he's someone who definitely has it sitting dormant in him. And again, he did great in other leagues like the BBR, like the NCP. He just wasn't able to find it here in the WBE. I don't know if it was just because it's on a grander scale or what it is, but he was just kind of unable to really get the best out of this great draft that he had. Hopefully he can bounce back next season, but just a little bit unfortunate how things ended up going down. But speaking of the Reuniclus, we're gonna jump into Magnitude next. And this was another coach that I was very disappointed by his season, because he's another person, especially after watching his WBE season the season before,
Exactly.
where he made it all the way to finals and won the finals game despite the all stuff that went on there. So he was the runner-up last season due to like a technicality and stuff like that, but he played great that season, and it was really cool to see a longtime player really find it in the format and like really like understand what was going on a lot better. And this season, like, his team wasn't the best, like he didn't have like a broken roster or anything like that, but there were so many games that were so winnable for Steve, where he just kind of lost sight of what his end game was and things like that. And the biggest thing with Steve is, I think it's something I struggle with myself, is he tilts hard as soon as something doesn't really go well for Steve. You could tell. And it's ironic because the last week was his first live comm, and we kind of like, because we've never really gotten to see Steve play live, you can kind of see you kind of see into the mindset of why he's kind of struggling right now. As soon as one thing went wrong in that game, I was like, oh, and the way he reacted, I was like, oh damn, he loses. Like, he can't win with this mindset. And I think that'll be really, really big for Steve going forward, is understanding that you make one bad play, it doesn't kill you for the rest of the game. There's so little times where you make one bad play early in the game and you auto lose because of it. And that was a lot of the time with Steve, where he'd do that and then he'd try and overplay out of his mind to get back into a game that he wasn't even necessarily out of yet, and he would put himself in an even deeper hole, and he would just kind of constantly dig himself deep holes and just be unable to dig himself out of it. So really, really unfortunate season by Steve. He had a couple great games. I remember he played very well versus the George Goomies. He played great versus James Bay, and pulled a 4-0 win off of him, which was actually like a great game by him. And that was like the Steve I was waiting to see all season. It was his 4-0 win against James. Phenomenal game. I think he played great. It was just he couldn't find it this season, unfortunately. And I think the last week, despite it being a little bit of a meme game, maybe we should talk about that game too, because like, despite it being a little bit of a meme game, I think that really was kind of like the personification of Steve's season.
Yeah,
all that stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Unfortunate, but you could also, like, if you like look at Steve's schedule, he had the second hardest schedule this season. Average win percentage was 60%. So like, you see, he played auto, almost won but lost. Played MV week 2. Played Seabed, which I think was 1-1 at that point, and we thought that he had the best team in the league. Then he plays Joey. So
definitely not
Fruit
fun
Berries.
for 4 weeks, which can get into your head too.
Oh yeah, exactly. Especially going 0-4. Like, he wasn't out of it at 0-4 by any means, especially because like 5-5 with minus differential got in the playoffs. So like, there was definitely a way for him to make it, but he also played 7 out of the 8 coaches that made playoffs. So that's pretty rough. Maybe they had to nerf him a little bit because he made it to the championships last season.
No, they just don't want to see him win. It's unfortunate.
Unfortunate, but yeah. No, I helped Steve with his drafts, and I mean, I like this draft because I was helping him with it, but honestly, I think it was his round 1 pick, Reuniclus. I don't think he utilized that well at all this season, and I was really hinting at him to pick Weavile instead of Reuniclus. In tier 3, I don't think Reuniclus was bad at all in tier 3, but I think Weavile was just a step above Reuniclus in that regards. And I think Weavile would have been super nice, especially like Como and Ferrothorn. I think that would have been a pretty cool offensive combination there. But yeah, I just remember he just didn't use Reuniclus as a pivot like at all, and that's tough when you have like something as high ranked as it is and just not utilizing it that well.
It only came to half
otherwise,
the games, too.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I know he loved Barraskewda, and I think the results definitely showed that he played pretty well with it this season. I think it's a pretty sleeper mon in the draft format, just because of how fast it is.
Doesn't need rain anymore, especially with stuff like Flip Turn now, which is cool.
Exactly, yeah. So unfortunate by Steve, but funny entertainment as always. Funniest coach out there. Maybe with Nexus.
Him and Nexus,
debatable
yeah.
between the two. Yeah, but no, just unfortunate for Steve, but they had to nerf him for his championship run last season.
Oh yeah, for sure. But on to the next, we have That's a
That's
Plus
another funny coach.
Woo!
Very entertaining.
Yeah, we have That's a. Then yeah, we're even coming up close on Nexus. But
I think we both have him at 13.
Mm-hmm.
So I was higher on him, you were lower on him. We end the season at the same place. And I think this is appropriate.
Yeah. So it's funny because the last few games of the season, he actually probably played his best. He knocked off Uzi week 9, and then he knocked off Seabad week 10. Uzi, that's definitely an upset. Seabad, I could definitely see a little bit more via his season and stuff like that. And then his game versus Nexus, even the week before, he played blindfolded, and he played better than most of his early game season games blindfolded. Maybe that's just what he needed to get his mojo back. But this was another roster that I really didn't like preseason. I definitely liked his team very early on, but I was not a big fan of his roster, what he had, and all that stuff at the front. I'm never a big fan of the double. I wasn't a fan of the T-Tar at all. And
yeah, T-Tar didn't make any sense with this team. And how many times did he bring it?
He brought it 6 times, and they were all at the latter half of the season when he stopped bringing Rain. The first half of the season, I remember he didn't bring T-Tar until week 4 or 5. I think he only brought it with Rain once. And it's tough when a lot of your offense is predicated on Rain and you disrupt that momentum a lot by trying to bring in T-Tar, especially when it's really one of your 2 rockers. The only other one was Dreadnought, which is another mon. It is a pretty solid rocker, especially in Rain, because it's going to be faster than things and has good natural bulk because, being a rock type and having a good physical defense stat and stuff like that can definitely get it up on a lot of things. But this team was definitely very, very interesting. And he had this very hyper offensive approach of I'm going to attack where my opponent cannot defend. But a lot of the time it didn't work just because his team didn't synergize very well offensively. I feel like if a lot of the games where he really broke through and he won was a little bit due to his opponents kind of misplaying and things like that. Or him potentially getting, a little bit lucky and things like that. I think the game versus Chimp is definitely a big indicator of that. He did beat Chimp, which is a very big win. You can't take that away.
Definitely. You got to put yourself in a position. Yeah, a
W is a W regardless of how you get it. But I think that was, a very big indicator of kind of his season as a whole. He beat James Bake
first week. Yeah, that was pretty convincing win too.
Yeah, he beat him. He definitely outplayed him, but I do think that James choked big time around the Mimikyu, which put him in a really, really bad position. And then from there, it was all L's until week 9, where he played a lot better in those 2 games. So I think he started to kind of pick it up and figure things out a little bit too. And I think his motivation waned after the first part of the season where things were going the best for him. Which is tough, but you gotta kind of realize what you signed up for. I'm not a big fan of the I know a lot of people who use the excuse I wasn't really trying. Regardless, a loss is a loss, just like a win's a win, no matter how you get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
He kind of lost a little bit of motivation, but he did pick it up towards the end. You could tell he started actually building his teams again, opposed to playing blindfolded. The last 2 weeks, I think he built his teams opposed to playing blindfolded or grabbing the same team from the week before and mixing around the mons a little bit, changing a move on him and stuff like that. So I think he definitely improved. That's why I moved him up a little bit more than I think I probably would have if you asked me after week 8. He probably would have been 15 or 16 for me. But he definitely improved a little bit. So kudos to him for that. And he won a couple games off some pretty big coaches with a pretty suboptimal team in my mind. So again.
Oh yeah, definitely. And hopefully he could. I hope he enjoyed it and will continue it in the future. I'm not sure if that's the case, but definitely a very entertaining coach, and I liked watching his games. And he played a Mimikyu really well. I think he got 2nd in kills this season with Mimikyu, so it's pretty impressive.
He brought some really cool sets opposed to just SD focus. He brought some cool sets sometimes. So it's cool to see the
exactly. Yeah, sure. But yeah, we could hop into the next team, which is gonna be Phenotex. Yeah, so he finished 3-7. Did he have any I think he had a forfeit at the end of the season or something.
Was it
yeah, I think he had one. I don't think he uploaded week 10. So whoever he played week 10.
It was
Goomies.
Yeah, 6-0.
Yeah,
it's definitely not a forforfeit. So good to him on 6-0. But I don't.
I'm pretty sure it was a forfeit, and you just put it wrong into the dock. But
free diff, baby.
Yeah. Free diff when it doesn't matter. Oh, it helps your stats maybe a little bit. Makes it look a little better. I think he was in the WE at one point, right? I
It says
believe
season
Faint
3
was
right
in
now.
an
It's
earlier
showing as
season.
season 3, and I know he played in the
Yeah.
first couple seasons too. I think he just didn't play in season 4, the most recent
Hmm.
one. But since
Well,
the
Faint
last
he also had a pretty rough schedule. He played MV, Joey, Auto, Callum, Chimp, Moet. So he played 6 out of the 8 coaches in playoffs right now. So that's pretty tough, especially for someone that hasn't played drafted a while. But, he did pretty. I think he did pretty all right considering the circumstances. And I was a pretty big fan of his team. I believe going into it. I think I had him in the bottom half, but I still think it was pretty solid. Kurum is a really cool mon. Kind of unfortunate that it just underperformed in general this season, but it definitely happens. But like he had Talonflame, Durant, Snorlax earlier on in the season. I think I like this team more than what it is currently. Just looking at it, it's weird to have like Jellison and Cofagrigus on the same team and a Jellison Quagsire. So there's definitely some weird things there, but he definitely played Pangoro. He played Pangoro super well. I think I've had it once in a draft league, and it definitely went above my expectations of the mon when I did have it. It just seems too slow in theory for it to work pretty well. But I mean, first of all, for your tier 4, that's pretty great value for Pangoro there, and he was able to win. Especially what was the game that he swept with Pangoro at
SD,
one point?
SD with like just bullet punch and stuff like that. It was versus Seabed.
Was it Seabed? Yeah. Early on the season, he was down like 6-1 or 6 or something pretty big.
He was getting tossed around a little bit. Seabed kind of gave him a nice position to.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think he switched down or Skarmory or something and let him set up a Swords Dance. I don't remember what the circumstance was, but that was a couple months ago at this point. So that's kind of crazy there. But yeah, no, I think Faint had a pretty good presentations as well, and it looked like he was really getting into it. Like it looked like he was at least building his teams with like a front office or something, and it had pretty fun doing it. So hopefully it continues in this format. I enjoyed watching Faint's games for sure.
Yeah, no, same. I think that a lot of the time that Faint kind of would just he played very in the turn sometimes when he was losing. And when I say that, I mean kind of the sense of him not really thinking of his end game and what he needs to kind of position himself for the end and not losing the end game. Because in the early games, a lot of the time, he didn't play super awful. It was just he kind of let certain things take a little bit too much chip, and that would put him in a bad position for the end. I think the game versus Patty was a big indicator that him kind of letting his entire team get chipped down into Drain Punch range is a really big indication of him not really thinking of like, oh man, I'm not really good against a Scarf Fighting type move. In the end, I need to keep this healthy, I need to keep this around, that kind of thing. He used Scizor well when he picked it up, despite him bringing X Scizor a lot when it gets Bug Bite. That was probably my biggest pet peeve of the season. That hurt a little bit when I saw it, but I really do think that he, throughout the season, you kind of start to slowly see, like, things start to click for him a little bit, and he, again, didn't play super awful. His builds were actually pretty solid some of the time, and like you said, I think he was getting a little bit of help. You could tell he was enjoying it and having fun doing it, and I, from what I've heard, I think he's playing in a league after the DLC, so I hope he does, continue to really enjoy it and get better and stuff like that, because I think he definitely has the potential to do so in this format. So hopefully he keeps it going, and yeah, I definitely enjoyed watching him as well.
Yeah, for sure.
On to the next, probably my favorite coach to watch this season is going to be Nexus. Now Nexus, very, very entertaining stuff to watch. I really did enjoy his content, and he had a pretty fun team as well. As I look for the name, it's Pittsburgh Pichus, correct? Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
The big thing with Nexus too was I felt like he was another person who very much so played in the turn, and he would realize it after he made a bit of an over aggressive play, let something take a lot of chip, like in his week 10 game where he let the Keldeo take a little bit too much chip, and he was another person who kind of just always set up the end game for him bad. Earlier in the season though, it was also a matter of him playing the early game very rushed and freaking out a little bit because of the timer, to where he would play a little bit over aggressive, get put in a bad spot, and then he'd have to play ridiculously aggressive. He would pull himself back a little bit and it wouldn't be enough. He underutilized Rillaboom a little bit in the early season. He kept bringing like Life Orb every single week, but I think he kind of started to figure it out a little bit. He played really well with Keldeo. There was a couple games where he did play pretty well. Honestly, I think he played very well versus Seabad. He played pretty well versus Visually and was able to take a game off of Viz, who was bringing obviously not like
not a great
crazy
team.
But regardless, he ended up winning off him, and he did play well in that game, despite a couple hiccups there and stuff like that. I think he had a lot of potential with this roster, and when I watch Nexus play, I don't think like, oh man, this is a sub 500 coach. I think he could definitely make playoffs in a league like this if he kind of just learned how to hone in a little bit of that energy that he exhibits in his videos, which is great. Again, he was definitely my favorite coach to watch entertainment wise, but I think sometimes that may be getting in the way of his thought process and things like that. But he's definitely someone I really enjoyed watching, and I think that he could definitely see success in the future if he just calms it down a little bit, thinks through his end game, and positions himself a little bit better.
Yeah, I think he definitely cost himself a couple games early on this season with a little bit of a wild commentary. But looking at strength of schedule, you can see who he played. Played MV week 1, Joey week 2, Otto week 3. Seabad, who we thought, again, that he was going to perform better than what he did. Week 4, then James week 5, Mo at week 6, Callum week 7. So, like, he had the hardest schedule in the league. He literally played all 8 coaches that are in playoffs, plus Seabad, who we thought was going to have a better season than what he did.
And he almost snuck in still. He almost snuck in still, which is good.
And he almost got in. Yeah, so I think Nexus should definitely be pretty proud of his season. I think we both have him ranked 10. I think it was kind of hard for me to rank any of the others necessarily lower than Nexus, but I think Nexus definitely could justify himself getting a playoff position this season. Just a couple early unfortunate games, I think, figuring out the new timer and such. Like, if he was more accustomed to it, I think he would have made playoffs this season.
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, as the season progressed, you could see him kind of figure it out and calm down a little bit and figure it out a little bit more. And he played much better throughout. So definitely good, from some good stuff from Nexus there. But yeah, on to the next, which is going to be Chimp back. Do you want to talk about Chimp season? I believe you have him a little bit higher than I do.
Yeah, what do I have Chimp back ranked? I have Chimp 1, 2 at 5. Okay, and you have him at 7. Okay. Yeah, Chimp pack. So we definitely had a pretty big discrepancies on what we thought, what we considered was going to be a good team or not. I really like this team, and I know you are definitely pretty against his whole his whole team. I think he had 3 steals.
Steal.
Yeah.
What
was it? Sizzle or Lucario?
No, 3 steals. No, it was double water, which is completely fine. It was the triple grass.
Yeah,
triple
grass. Yeah, he had Gorgeist, Appleton, and what else did he have?
But he did make changes though.
Oh yeah, no, he made some changes, and I think they were pretty decent changes. He traded with Phenotex. Yeah, I think getting Snorlax on the team in tier 4 was really, really nice. Even though who did he brought it against? He brought it against Phenotex, right? When they played?
He also brought it against Nexus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it did okay against Nexus. Just sitting there and taking on the Keldeo. So that was pretty cool. But you got Zeraora, which I forget what his draft order position was. Obviously it had to be pretty high in order to get Zeraora, but he did pretty well with it, which is kind of hard to not do well with it overall. Didn't bring Rotom this season, which I think he got it later, so that makes sense. But every other mod he brought at least once. Chimp, it's annoying that he doesn't do team builders. So it's kind of hard to judge what his thought process is of building teams. And I think he does have pretty cool sets and ideas in general. It would just be neat if he could share what his process is. Maybe he's hiding that for playoffs. But in the future it would be. Yeah, he was a little bit, but it definitely died out towards the end. So a little bit unfortunate there, but slow start, but was able to win a lot of his games to end the season. And I think he clinched playoffs in week 9. So that's pretty impressive considering I think he was 1-4 or something at this point in the season.
Yeah, he really turned.
He was 1-3.
No, he started off 1-4 because he lost to Vatsa week 4.
Well, he beat
It was Patty.
he beat Yeah, and then he was able to barely beat Uzi. I remember that was one of the best games of this season, Chimp versus Uzi.
Mhm.
That definitely could have gone either way if for both of them. I think obviously either of them would have made playoffs if they won that game because Uzi was not that close or not that far behind making playoffs. So definitely could have gone either way there. But yeah, no, Chimp, pretty solid season. As a 7 seed, I'd definitely be worried with Joey as a 2 seed. Playing this game. Though Joey does have Sand versus Aurora, so I think Joey probably has an advantage.
Able to take the first matchup off him though. So.
Exactly.
Definitely can do it. He definitely has a skill too.
Yep. So we'll see there. But talk about next team,
which I accidentally skipped. So we're gonna go to Uzi because I totally read past on accident. So we're gonna talk about Uzi really quick. Uzi was another person who had a very, very tough schedule, if I'm remembering correctly. Like a very tough schedule. He played very well in some of his games.
Yeah, he was 5th hardest schedule, so up there.
He played, especially at the beginning of the season. He played CBAD week 1, which he lost, and again, very good roster at least on CBAD's end. He started off a lot better than he ended up finishing. Then he had to play Auto, which was a very close game. Then he had to play Joey into MV into Chimpact, and then his schedule did ease up a good fair bit.
Mm-hmm. But it's hard to put yourself on the back foot like that.
Oh yeah,
earlier
for sure.
On the season.
He was fighting for a spot from like week 3 onwards, basically, because especially in shorter seasons, only 10-week seasons, it is
10 weeks is.
I guess 10 weeks is pretty standard at this point now. I'm thinking back to like the Gen 7 days when we used to do 12-week leagues, stuff like that. But regardless, he did start off a little bit subpar. I really liked his roster as a whole. I love the Hydra, like Scully offensive core. I think that's also obviously really, really solid. I think he can get a good, decent low tier bulk. He's someone who was very much so. I liked his builds a lot as well. I think he really thought out his thought process and stuff like that. And was able to, set up a lot of potential, really, really good end games. He had some great wins. In the season, he had a great game against Chimp where he unfortunately ended up losing. He had a great game versus Otto where he ended up winning. That was a really good one as well. Great win versus Moet. So he definitely had a very good season. It was just a few things ended up kind of taking him off and kind of setting him on the back foot. There was a couple games that he really should have won that he didn't. He lost to due to some unfortunate hacks, but also some very subpar positioning in my opinion. He lost to, what was the other one? CBAD week 1, he didn't play the best. Kind of gave that game to CBAD, unfortunately, but it was a really close one still. So he really could have snuck in playoffs with just 1 or 2 games really going his way. But other than that, he should be able to hopefully. And yeah, so other than that, that's pretty much it. Do you want to talk about Mr. Moet really quick?
Yeah, sure. So Moet, I wasn't a fan of his team. I had it ranked 14th going into the season, so yeah, wasn't a big fan of it. But he was able to, honestly, I think he performed appropriately. Like, I think Moet's a better player than his record indicated, and I think his team held him back from doing better than what it did. But I would have been very surprised, even though I had him ranked 14th. I would have been surprised if Moet missed playoffs, and he almost did miss playoffs. He barely got in. To Nexus. He did win his he lost last week. So yeah, he would have missed playoffs if Nexus would have won his game. So definitely unfortunate there. Like you see as Marini, Volibee, Volt picks right now, 3 months in a team, Arctivish, which I haven't seen anyone use. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone use, let alone anyone use it successfully. So that's kind of weird. Actually in tier 3 is kind of cringy. I don't think. Yeah, like Hatterine's cool, Volcarona's cool, but he was able to make playoffs work. He really utilized Marini pretty well this season and Volibee, so like it's kind of hard to fault him for having used them. But yeah, I think like his strength of schedule was about in the middle. He performed about in the middle. I don't know if he ever did Wi-Fi before this.
APA.
So
He played an APA.
Oh yeah. He did play an APA. That's right. So I don't think he has a whole lot of experience otherwise. So obviously he has tournament experience on Smogon, so it makes sense. But he kind of he's going into playoffs and like on a pretty bad losing streak Like he lost 4 of his last 5 games. So hopefully he can like get some momentum getting into playoffs and playing a broken team that MB has. So I don't expect a whole lot out of this game for a moment, but congrats at least on making playoffs, I'd say.
Perfect time to go on a hot streak. Perfect time to go on a hot streak.
Yeah.
But we're going to go ahead and jump ahead to Mr. James Bake. Someone who started off the season very, very rocky at first, losing a pretty tough game to That's a week 1, who obviously didn't have the best season. And I think he played pretty subpar in that game. But afterwards, I was very impressed with him throughout the season. He's someone who has a doubles background, not much of a singles background from what I've heard and from what I know. And he was able to adjust to the format very, very well. After losing that week 1 game, he went on a 4-game win streak before unfortunately losing to Steve, and then won another couple 2 games, and then won his week 10 as well, which isn't the biggest deal in the world because I believe that was a pretty big meme game. But yeah, regardless, I was very impressed with him. I was very impressed with his builds. He was able to make the best out of a team that I personally like. I know a lot of people could use this team very well. Me personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of it because there was another team that was very, very slow, and its best scarfer was Raboot, which wasn't my best, my favorite thing. It was a very
Rotom's the best scarfer, but Raboot's the fastest scarfer, I guess.
Rotom, yeah, my bad. I totally missed over the Rotom. Rotom is definitely a better scarfer, but it's also a mon that doesn't want to run scarf a lot of the time. It's so good defensively. And another thing is I was worried about going into the season was Frostlash being one of the, really the only fast offensive threat. But he was able to use it really well. This is the best I've ever seen someone use Frostlash. I believe it went 10-3 on the season. He was able to utilize it really well. I really liked his builds. He was very specific with his EVs too, which was cool to see that VGC background, where I know they're a lot like a lot of draft players where they are very hyper specific with their EVs, and I love seeing stuff like that. So he's someone who definitely really impressed me throughout the season. After a pretty rocky start, he was able to really find his footing and use this really bulky balanced build and just kind of outlast his opponents and put together wins and stuff like that. So really good on James. I think he's someone who definitely, one of the coaches who impressed me the most. There's another coach that impressed me a little bit more. When it comes to, coach I wasn't expecting to do as well, but we'll obviously get to him soon.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed watching James. I didn't really know anything about him going into the season, and I thought his team was pretty underwhelming just because of how bulky it was. He didn't really have a whole lot of versatility, and early on this season, he also didn't have Trick Room to take advantage of like the slow, bulkier offensive mons. He had like Conkeldurr and Rhyperior, but yeah, he was able to do pretty well, even considering like Corviknight has no kills this season, or Amoonguss has hardly any kills this season as like being among the best mons that he has. So yeah, pretty impressive performance. I think the best performance of a Frostlass that I've ever seen in Draft League.
I think it's probably the best you'll ever see too, unless you're watching like some of the Farm Showdown League.
Yeah,
it's usually typically on most builds, which I think is cool that he was able to draw out the potential in it. But most builds you'll see it as like, I'm gonna get up spikes and Destiny Bond or Willow or something. But he was able to use it offensively awesome, and it was cool like to see how much like the additions of stuff like Triple Axle and Poltergeist could make it, a mixed threat opposed to just throwing off Shadow Balls and Ice Beams. So definitely really cool stuff. But next up, we have Mr. Visually. You want to talk about Viz?
Yeah. So, I don't know. I still don't really know what I think about Viz. He's kind of still like a dark horse to me, even though obviously he's ranked 3rd right now and done really well this season. It's kind of the similar boat as Chimp, is like he also doesn't really show what his team is going into it, so it's kind of hard to judge how he's actually doing, and like understanding what his thought process is sometimes is not as clear as what I'd like it to be, honestly, if that makes sense. And coupled with the fact I was okay on this team. I thought it was definitely below average. And it was weird to have like Alakazam plus Jirachi, like your 2 best mons both being psychic types. So psychic types are probably the best type right now in the format with no pursuit. But no, Visually did pretty well. I don't think I can really point to one week necessarily and like, okay, that was like his breakout performance, like that he just completely dominated someone. Maybe outside of week 10 against Steve in a game that really didn't make a difference. But yeah, that was cool to see a Tangela get 5 kills in the game. That's pretty impressive there. He did very well with Primarina this season and Dragalge. I think they were his like two mons that definitely overperformed considering the tiers that they were in. So overall, pretty solid work.
And
I think you have him.
Scrafty went 8-2. He killed it with
Oh,
Scrafty.
well.
What in the world?
Oh, I love Scrafty.
It's a great mod.
I'm not surprised about that.
Mm-hmm.
People sleep on it. You have him ranked 3rd. I have him ranked 6th. So a little bit of a pretty big difference there. But Bisley also had a pretty tough schedule. I think he had 6th hardest schedule. So he had the hardest schedule out of all the playoff coaches. So
I think with Viz's schedule, the reason he played a lot of the really high top coaches, but he also played a lot of like the bottom coaches, like lower end coaches, record wise and stuff like that. So,
but he was. Yeah. Did he play Joey?
Yeah, he played Joey. He beat Joey. I think Joey brought a pretty suboptimal team because he might play him in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think
definitely fair.
Together, like a team, and it was a very good game though, and he was able to win it again, win to win. He played MV as well, and he played like James, Chimp. He was able to beat Chimp week 1. I remember that was a very interesting game. They played on regular timer and they had to like restart it like 5 or 6 times. But
yeah.
It was definitely he's someone who definitely surprised me. I had not heard much about Viz from a draft perspective. I know he does a lot of like Wi-Fi smoke on stuff and like
he did draft
like that. Yeah,
I knew
he did
in the past.
PG. Yeah, it was a Roots League, I remember. And then I played him once in PGP as well, and in APLC. But I hadn't heard like much of like a resume other than like the one-off league, and I didn't necessarily think his team's a little bit wonky, and I didn't necessarily think he was gonna come in and take the league by storm and have a great regular season. But he did, and he had some impressive wins, and can't fault him for that at all.
Exactly.
Had a great season, so good stuff for Mr. Visually. On to the next though, we have Automatic. I'm not even gonna try and say it. I'm going to just click on the button.
I looked it up when I did like the very beginning. I looked up a pronunciation and I don't remember what it is.
I know how to spell it now though, at the very least. When the season started,
well, it's literally in the logo. How did you not know how to spell it before?
Because I didn't have the logo up next to me. I don't want to do that. It's a really small picture on the graphics when I'm doing them, so I had to like memorize it. I also didn't know how to spell Philadelphia at first though, so don't laugh.
Oh my gosh, you spelled with an F?
I'm awful at spelling. I'm terrible at spelling. But
go Philly. Philly's easy enough.
Yeah, that's true. But Otto had a great season. He was really able to utilize this really fat build. Starmie, he was great with, which was really cool to see, because that was a kind of a big thing I have with his team. Was he really relied on Starmie a lot for breaking power on his build. That and Aegislash, obviously, which he used very well too. But it was Aegis, Starmie, and there was just a lot of fat around it to support it. And he was able to use the Starmie really well, bring like Life Orb like most weeks. I think he ended up bringing it, which is really cool. He had some very, very solid wins this season against people like obviously I believe he beat Callum. He was able to beat
I think Otto also it also kind of falls in a boat that like similar to Viz, that I don't think he had like a single breakout dominating performance this season, and I think it's just based on the nature of his team. And a lot of his teams,
it's not flashy. It's not a flashy team.
Yeah, kind of similar to like MV and Joey, which obviously are the two top teams in the league. They brought pretty consistent styles, and it was basically a lot of bulk on his team, coupled with Starmie. He brought Starmie almost every game, and that was a really good breaker for him. And then Aegislash was usually almost always offensive. So it was like those two offensive. Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of bulk. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense based on the team he has. Didn't bring Linoon in a serious manner this season, which was unfortunate. I wanted to see that shine.
But definitely some good stuff from him. Like you said, I'm trying to think back. There wasn't really like a defining moment. He was able to just kind of position himself well and outbulk a lot of his opponents. Just with the nature of his really fat team, where he was able to kind of really play with a safer game plan opposed to having to play super flashy with a more offensive build.
Exactly. And he also had a second easiest schedule, 42 win percentage on average. So it makes sense, and Otto's a great player, so it makes sense that he did really well this season. But he kind of I don't have him third. It was debating between me. I guess you'd probably see it on the screen, but Otto and Calb for third and fourth. And I also had honestly I had Chimp kind of right there as well. Even he had a low record. I think Chimp played well in his losses, but I think just because Auto had such an easy schedule, and like honestly, the last the last half of the year, like I don't know if he put his best foot forward necessarily. I think he was hiding stuff like playing Viz and hiding James obviously for week 10, but he was even hiding stuff as early as week 8. So I think it made sense that like he had a good like 60-70% of the season that was pretty serious, and then he was able to relax. But I think other coaches like were able to relax and also win as opposed to relaxing and losing. So unfortunate for Otto. Maybe he would have liked to try to aim for a higher playoff spot than what he did, but we'll see. He's still, I think, in the top half in playoffs, so that's pretty solid, and hopefully he can win and play probably MV the week after.
Yeah, no, for sure. He definitely has the potential to do so. But we have Callum next up. Did you want to talk about him? Because you said you were flip-flopping between him and Otto there for third.
Yeah, I have him third. What do you have him ranked? Do you have him fifth? Okay. Yeah, no, Callum, I think I had his team. I think I was higher on Callum's team than you were. I think I had him like 6th or 7th.
I had him pretty high. I love the hyper offensive approach. I thought.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah. No, his hyper offense was super, super cool. And I think we assumed the basis of the team was like gonna be Screens, Grimmsnarl, and then just a bunch of momentum between Cinderace and Caballi on Flygon, Serena. Just using that momentum to like just break, and then maybe Porygon Z plus Poltergeist, potentially just winning games at the end of the season, like at the end of the games. And he didn't really use Grimmsnarl with Screens a whole lot. I think for when he brought it was usually offensive, which is fine.
He brought Screens a couple times.
bulk up.
Like, he only brought it 5 times total too, and only a couple of times it was Screens, so he didn't utilize the Screens very often now.
Yeah, interesting. And like Poltergeist, he like hardly brought it all, but obviously the big Wonder Guard, maybe the set of the season, the Wonder Guard Poltergeist set, doing pretty well for him. But yeah, I think this was definitely the best performance of Porygon Z that I've ever seen as well. He was tearing teams apart with Porygon Z, especially with webs with Vikavolt. That was another thing, Vikavolt webs. And Vikavolt for tier 5 was great, and he brought it, I think, almost every game. So it makes sense to utilize it. Callum, I think, had a slightly easier schedule than average, but definitely not something to scoff at. So especially because I don't think he's done Draft League, but it's been a really long time since he has. So it was a very impressive run, and I'm very happy that he's doing well. And it looks like he's enjoying it, and it looks like he's also enjoying building the teams with like a front office similar to like Phenotex. So hopefully he continues playing Draft League. I really enjoyed watching him. Maybe I think both of our biggest surprises this season.
Oh yeah, for sure. I very much so enjoyed watching Callum this season. I love the hyper offensive approach, and I was a little bit nervous going into it. Like, I very much so liked the team a lot. I thought a lot of the offensive pieces really rolled into each other and really supported each other really well in this thing. And he had good pivots. It wasn't a hyper offensive team that had no backbone, and it was all or nothing. I'm winning 4-0 or I'm losing 5-0 kind of thing. It was able to have that, nice defensive backbone pivot, but he was also able to play aggressively, which I think is really important with a team like this. And it really speaks to, his confidence as a battler coming into draft after, not playing it for a good while. Just to be able to play as aggressive as he did, honestly, from really early in the season onwards. I remember even week 1 where he did beat Fruit Berries. Obviously not the craziest opponent in the world, but I remember specifically seeing in the game, he made a couple of really, really risky plays that end up working out. I mean, not risky as in like they were bad and he got lucky that it happened. No, they were good plays, but they were definitely risky, and they had a downside if it went wrong or something like that and he overpredicted. So it was really cool to see him play aggressively enough. As the season went on, he started using Porygon Z a lot better. Remember earlier in the season, like specifically in the game versus Moet, where he had Specs PZ versus a team that's normal resist with Duraludon.
That was really frustrating.
Yeah, which takes like 80% from a Specs dry attack.
Yeah.
If it's like max HP, I think like no bulk Duraludon has like a chance to die after rocks to Specs PZ.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Crazy.
But he wasn't ever able to like. He wasn't ever. Well, he was able to. He just didn't.
He was able to. He just chose not to.
Yeah. And I think after that week, I think the very next week, he did really well with PZ versus it might not have been the next week after that. It might have been the week after against Phenotex. Yeah, I think it was against Phenotex.
Oh yeah, Phenotex he destroyed.
he was able to really massacre him with PZ, and really, and then the week after that with against Nexus, same thing, Webs plus PZ just really put on the pressure, and it was really cool to see him kind of like realize like, oh man, I need to get in my breakers. It doesn't matter if I'm getting all this momentum if I'm not breaking through teams when I do get the momentum, and it was really cool to see. He's someone I was definitely really, really impressed with throughout the season. So really good on Cal.
Yeah.
It was really fun to watch him.
I think he probably had the second best second half of the year, probably outside of Envy. I think it was super impressive.
Right, good diff too. When he won big.
Oh yeah, and that helps.
Oh yeah, for sure. But next we have Pokegame, and it's cool because like our top two teams had very different play styles throughout the season, which was cool to see both of them kind of thrive. With Pokegame, he brought a lot of really strong offense, maybe one or two pivots throughout with his team and stuff like that, where as obviously I don't even think it's really spoilers to say, but Envy's our last coach because he's the only other one we haven't talked about, had a very fat bulky approach where he had a really strong defensive backbone, and then he had things like Dragapult or like Mamoswine to break through and like Dragapult to clean up and stuff like that. But Pokegame, back to him, he really brought a lot of offense and was able to really overwhelm a lot of his opponents and really position himself well. He used Extra Drill well. He was able to use the sand really well. And Sylveon, I don't think he brought defensive with Sylveon like once.
Yeah.
Like I think maybe once or twice. Other than that, he was like Calm Mind 3 attacks. He was Specs. I think he brought Curse 1 week, which is actually really cool with like Bite and Quick Attack and stuff like that, which is awesome to see. He was able to use a lot of his mons that he was really comfortable with, like the Noivern and like the Extra Drill. Like Slow Roll being a great pivot. There was that one game versus Nexus where it just like refused to die, which was obviously really, really interesting as well. He was able to really utilize his offensive team, his really offensive approach, and just overwhelm teams before he his weaker defensive backbone, which was usually just like a fat like but offensive Gigalith and like maybe Slowbro on the team, or like a fatter Noivern or something like that. And really just pressure teams before other teams could pressure him, which was obviously really cool to see. And something I was completely wrong about in the draft breakdown, which I'll own up to now. I really liked his team a lot. Again, I didn't think his team was bad, but I remember in the PRs for post draft, I was like, man, I really don't like Drill plus Dougie. It seems a little bit redundant, but he was able to use them in obviously the way he intended, in which one would really break through the other. And if you have a check to Extra Drill, that's your designated check, and you use it to check Dougie, or you have that check for Extra Drill, and then obviously he gets chipped as it takes down Extra Drill, and then Dougie comes in afterwards and just kills everything. I thought that was a really cool dynamic, and the double weather was also cool to see pulled off and stuff like that. So just a really consistent season by Pokegame. He didn't really have anything like super crazy that defined him. He was someone I obviously thought was going to do really well. He always does very well in the WBE in his draft leagues and stuff like that. It was just more of the same for him.
9-1 plus 26. That usually wins a league. That's super impressive.
Yeah, and that was only second seed, which is crazy. So,
yeah,
that's actually nuts.
But he also had the easiest schedule this season. So it makes sense. He only played one of the top 5 teams this season. Mm-hmm. So especially with Aim's experience, it makes sense that he did pretty well this season. I think I was probably around the middle of the pack in terms of what his team actually was, but like I knew that he was going to do very, very well this season with this team. So because he is a great player, so it makes a lot of sense. He probably was the best Noivern player, Vanillix player, probably a Lone Doug Trio player, because I don't think I've seen much of it used at all, and probably the best Slowbro. Used Slowbro pretty well this season as well. It's a very solid just pivot throughout the season. Teleport is such a great ability, and I think people I think definitely have learned that pretty quickly. And tier 2 Slowbro is definitely worth it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But lastly, we have Envy, as we kind of just spoiled right before that. Do you want to talk about Envy season? Another really dominant season. I
think you had Envy at 2.
No, I had Envy at 1 as well.
Well, you had him at 2 at week 1 or 2 or something.
Oh yeah, and then Envy kind of started to... He pulled ahead. I forget what point he pulled ahead, but he pulled ahead and he did not move from number 1 after I moved him there. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I think. Well, I had Seabad early on in the beginning, but yeah. Otherwise, Envy was number 1 the entire season, and it makes sense. He went 9-1 plus 37. That is insane. He also had a pretty easy schedule. I think he played a lot of similar people as Joey did. I don't think he played a whole lot of the top seeds, which will definitely help him going into playoffs. And he was able to meme in his last couple of games, but still win and put out entertaining product. So both Joey and Envy also had pretty good, very good production for their drafts. And it's cool that Joey does the interviews after his games, something different. So
Oh yeah.
shout outs to both of them for also having very high quality videos there. But yeah, no, I knew Chimp was going to do out this team because it was basically very similar. I mean, I had 4 of these mons in my AP Academy run. So
and then you got a zero
it makes sense.
on top of it. That was the dumbest thing ever. I do want to just mention that pre-DLC Galar decks, Shuckle got Dragapult Zero Aura on the same team, and oh my god, that was ridiculous.
That was fun.
I love the Academy guys, but good lord, what were you doing?
I don't know. I was debating. I was like, it's there. I mean, I have speed.
There's literally
Dragapult already,
why but why not?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's Evie's team is so fun. And like you even see like he brought Mammothswine to 5 games out of 10. That's not a lot. He brought Obstagoon to 2 games out of 10. That's insane. Obstagoon's such a strong wall breaker. Like it's crazy. He brought a Lantern 10 times. So it's crazy. But Lantern is really solid. And I think he showed how good Lantern, especially for tier 5. Skunk Tank, I usually crap on him on a lot, but it did super well this season for him. So it makes, it's very impressive. I've never seen Skunk Tank do nearly as like half the amount of work that it did for MV. So very impressive there. He has obviously the broken mod in Dragapult. I think it's going to be not as broken with DLC 2 because you're introducing a lot more powerful mons and a lot more fairies into the format. But Dragapult, it's so good. And he obviously took advantage of it, especially because Fruit Berries didn't pick Dragapult with the #1 overall pick. So that definitely helps.
I didn't know he had number 1.
Yeah, Fruit Berries is #1 and got Clefable.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Clefable's a top 5 mon, sure, but it's not Dragapult.
But yeah, very good season by MV. He was able to support Dragapult really well and really thrive and, have really nice fat defensive builds. But that should be it. It
made sense. Yeah, he brought a lot of fat this season and just used Dragapult as like a revenge killer. So it worked. And
it got like a good 70% of his kills too. So like, makes sense. But yeah, that's going to be our PRs for week 10. Let me know what you guys think about the season as a whole, not just week 10, but let us know what you guys thought, who your favorite coach to watch was, all that good stuff down there. I think we do have some stuff planned for playoffs, so be on the lookout for that over on Mr. Shuckleking's channel. Definitely go drop a sub over there. Do you have anything else to say before we head out?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, this was a very fun season and fun doing this so far for regular season. A lot of work, a lot of watching games. But it made me appreciate some of these creators. It's a lot of work posting these videos every week, planning, building teams, uploading, recording the battles, sometimes doing team builders as well, and the high quality production. It's a lot of work to do this week in and out. And for the most part, all the coaches kept a consistent schedule. So some coaches were a little behind the Saturday deadline, quote unquote. But overall, I think this is a very, very good season so far, and I'm very excited for playoffs.
Oh yeah, no, you and me both. It should be a good time. Definitely some pretty fun stuff, and looking forward to playoffs and all that stuff. Definitely go drop a sub on Shuckleking channel. Be sure to drop a like on this video as well. Drop a sub if you haven't done so already. I appreciate each and every one of you that have stuck with us throughout the season. Hopefully we can keep it going into playoffs and end off the WBE season strong. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Later.